Excited to see how 4 terrifying Pokemon will work. You think they'll get jealous if one terastallizes and the other ones have to eat the earthquakes?
Yeah, I think if Magmar is looking at Sneasler up there in the air going, why do I have to take the earthquake? That's going to be rough.
All right, well, it's time for game 1 of round 6. Alberto Lara and Andrew Novak. Metagross, Sneasler on Drew's side, and Alberto having Alolan Ninetales and Corviknight.
An interesting preview there as we see what Alberto's 4 Pokemon are. No Garchomp here, doesn't want to fight with it. Instead, the emphasis seems to be all about the Corviknight. It's supported by the Ninetales right now, but the Ninetales itself in a pretty poor position. Has to worry about a Bullet Punch or just a Dire Claw coming in from Sneasler on the other side. Corviknight, though, not really too threatened here. It can't take close combats forever, but it's pretty safe to start setting up here, and the more boosts it gets, the safer it is in this position. So another situation where if Ninetales is able to draw some attention away, maybe force a Dire Claw that direction or a Bullet Punch that direction, that's just opening up time for Corviknight to try to establish itself in this matchup.
Sneasler will swap out for Andrew here on turn 1, so just wanted to see what the field had on the other end. Here is the Magmar, the Eviolite Pokemon, going to be super bulky, having access to Follow Me to redirect attacks on future turns. Ninetales swapping out as well, as you mentioned, very much scared of a Heavy Slam into that slot. Volcarona will resist it. You also have Flame Body, which has the chance to activate, and Metagross is burned from the beginning of this game. Corviknight free to set up a bulk up, boosting its stats here, and looking for next turn. Unless you're worried about overheat, this Corviknight still feels pretty solid.
I mean, you do have to be worried about the overheat. That's why the Magmar has come in here. It's going to threaten damage against the Corviknight. Of course, Corviknight could just terastallize itself. Maybe you don't need your strong initial typing if you then have 2 boosts in both attack and defense. And of course, this can be like almost double setup as well. Like if you put too many resources into trying to take down the Corviknight before it gets too set up, then maybe 2 Quiver Dances happen, and that's the real threat anyway. Meanwhile, Volcarona has done its job pretty well. Has come in, taken that massive Heavy Slam for less than 50% damage, and then put the burn back on Metagross. That really means that whatever it is for Alberto's side is going to be more free to set up and try to work its way through Andrew's team.
So how is this Metagross going to deal with being burned from the beginning of the game? We're going to have that damage mitigated. Fire Spin into the Corviknight, so that's a different move on Magmar with that critical hit doing a lot of damage and trapping it here. Psychic Fangs through the burn is not going to be able to knock out Volcarona, and Corviknight gets to set up a second bulk up, +2 attack, +2 defense.
So Corviknight doesn't terastallize, stays on the field as a steel type. It doesn't take an overheat for it. Instead, just takes a Fire Spin that locks Corviknight on the field. Now, you have to imagine Corviknight wasn't super eager to leave the field anyway, because it now has the boost. But other than being locked on the field, the Fire Spin is also providing valuable damage over time. It means that Corviknight definitely can't take an overheat without terastallizing now, and even if it does terastallize, takes a chunk from an overheat, isn't looking invulnerable from whatever damage Andrew has in the back. Probably about time where Alberto's going to need to put the foot on the gas a little bit, start using those boosts to deal some damage. Otherwise, he's going to get traded away too easily.
Andrew will swap this burned Metagross out into another steel type in the King Gambit, so no other swaps here from Alberto. We saw him lock in the Terra Fire. His Corviknight was notorious for being Terra Dragon, but it's a new season, new reason to run Terra Fire here, making sure you now resist a potential overheat on the other end. But Magmar does not go for overheat. Instead, it will be a Follow Me to redirect the attack from this Volcarona. Flamethrower into the Fire type does pretty much no damage.
But costs the turn for the Magmar. Doesn't try to put any extra pressure on Corviknight. Corviknight just roosting anyway, is back to pretty healthy, and was forced to follow me because you can see how vulnerable that other slot is to Flamethrower. It was King Gambit that came in, would not have wanted to take a Volcarona Flamethrower. Was trying to get away from the Metagross, of course, couldn't take a Volcarona Flamethrower. And if you lose your Focus Sash on Sneasler to take a Volcarona Flamethrower, that's no good either. And so instead, Magmar is forced to follow me and just be, keeping the team safe from Volcarona. Meanwhile, Corviknight now is +2/+2 and at nearly full health.
And there might be another reason to activate the Terra Flying here, not for the ground type that could be in the back, but for the body press that Alberto has on Corviknight. You'd be a flying type, going from 4 times weak to the body press to then resisting it for the King Gambit.
We also know all of Andrew's Pokemon at this point, 3 physical attackers and Magmar. So as long as, now that this Corviknight is fire type, the more boosts it gets, the more vulnerable to damage it is. With the Roost available, I wouldn't be surprised to see Alberto continue to set it up now that it has used the Terastallization, but instead just Brave Birds, goes out on the offense, and Magmar just hangs on.
Yeah, just barely hanging on in the red from that +2 on the Brave Bird. But Swords Dance from King Gambit will sharply raise its attack by 2 stages, matching the attack on Corviknight's end. But of course, you are attacking into that +2 defense still. Magmar is so low, you probably only have one more Follow Me left in you anyway.
Right, Magmar is low, but still there. This would look maybe somewhat different if Magmar was already down and Sneasler was the fastest thing on the field, threatening a close combat into King Gambit. But for the moment, that Brave Bird wasn't enough damage, and so Magmar hangs on, is able to first redirect an attack from Sneasler. The King Gambit looking pretty threatening at +2, and maybe not too much stopping it from getting to +4 if it uses the Terastallization, which you have to imagine it's going to now. With 2 fighting attacks on the other side, it's time to find out which of the Pokemon gets the Flying Terastallization. It's King Gambit, ready to resist close combat, body press, anything else coming out.
Magmar very jealous that King Gambit gets to terrestrialize here in game 1. Sneasler with the coaching, you're able to bulk up without clicking bulk up on Corviknight, getting another attack and defense boost. The Sneasler Corviknight synergy is so strong, and Sneasler dodges the Fire Spin. That would have broke the sash and done solid damage into the Sneasler, but Magmar doesn't get any damage this turn. +2 Swords Dance, boosted Kowtow Cleave, not even close to enough damage into Alberto's Corviknight.
I think a really important decision from Andrew's side there that he went for the Kowtow Cleave. Didn't try to stay in the arms race with Swords Dance, and I think that makes it look more difficult now, because nothing stops another coaching Roost play, and the more of those plays that happen, the further behind this King Gambit gets. It's going to have to Swords Dance to keep up with the defensive boost that the Corviknight is getting. Meanwhile, King Gambit is not getting defensive boost. At some point, Corviknight is going to feel comfortable to just go out on the offense with Braver. Maybe Andrew hoping it's going to be now as Follow Me comes out.
Magmar will redirect the Dire Claw into that slot, but that could have been where you want to attack anyway. Magmar is down. Drew losing his supportive Eviolite Pokemon. Alberto not clicking Brave Bird. Instead, will Roost back up to full HP. And King Gambit with the Kowtow Cleave into Sneasler, bringing it down to 2 HP. Not like it matters since it had the Focus Sash anyway, but just feels a little better when it naturally hangs on through the hit. Drew is able to bring his own Sneasler onto the field now.
So Sneaslers on either side, but Corviknight now completely healthy. The Fire Spin has worn off, and there's no Magmar on the other side, and looking pretty comfortable in the position. 2 physical attackers on the other side. Of course, you have to worry about a critical hit. If King Gambit were to critical hit a Kowtow Cleave, well, that's Corviknight gone off the field. But meanwhile, there may be a coaching still available in this game, and the Corviknight can also just continue to boost itself with body press.
Alberto is worried about losing the Sneasler on this turn, so Volcarona will switch in. Fake Out goes to the Corviknight, though. Does not hit the Volcarona, does not fall for the bait. And now Andrew is able to Swords Dance yet again. Now it's a +4 boosted attack King Gambit.
A really crucial turn for Andrew. Gets the Fake Out into the right spot. Alberto doesn't have Protect on Sneasler and wants to try to keep it alive, and so he switches it out to the back. But the Fake Out goes into the Corviknight slot, meaning that the Corviknight did not get a defensive boost that turn, while King Gambit did get to attack boost. With with bulk up and coaching, you could have guaranteed 1 defense boost, but that's not how it plays out, and so now the damage is looking a little bit more serious.
Drew's just going to protect his King Gambit here on this turn from a potential hit from the Volcarona. Coaching into the King Gambit as well. That's going to boost both King Gambit, or the King Gambit's attack and defense even more. So that's a 5 attack stage boosted King Gambit on the other end of the field. But Corviknight's going to match that, and we will bulk up again, boosting attack and defense. The Volcarona's attack goes into the Protect, so no damage, just even more boost from the end of that turn.
Yeah, so for those tracking, it is 5 attack and 1 defense on the King Gambit on the other side, and 4 attack, 4 defense on the Corviknight on this side. The King Gambit getting a defense boost is really valuable. The first boost add a better multiplier to your stats than the later boosts. And so even just having 1 defense undoes a lot of those subsequent bulk ups for Corviknight. Makes it harder to get to the point where Brave Bird would actually threaten a 1-hit KO against King Gambit, especially because coaching could come out before the attack, but instead it's just Dire Claw, making sure that it isn't Flamethrower, but the Flame Body is huge there. Sneasler ends up burned.
2 for 2 for Flame Body on the 30% chance to burn. Volcarona being very effective, burning Metagross and Sneasler here in game 1. Alberto said, hey, I'm not stopping until I get to max. That's his 5th bulk up on the team. That's Kowtow Cleave into the Corviknight, and with 5 boost there. It's still not enough into the Corviknight unless you get a critical hit.
I think that burn is also really relevant because Ninetales should be able to come in here now and Aurora Veil if it wants to. Would have been otherwise threatened by the Dire Claw, but with the damage reduction from the burn, isn't as threatened. But for now, Alberto doesn't need it. Just goes into the Sneasler. 2 HP is enough to at least threaten something. It can be a Dire Claw into Kingambit with only 1 defense boost that might still be reasonable damage to try to get the body press over the top. It can be fake out to make sure that another coaching doesn't come out from the Sneasler on the other side. Or it could just be a coaching into Corviknight, but any of it's pretty valuable. That 2 HP is enough to have a relevant impact on this game.
Sneasler fakes out Kingambit, so Kingambit will not attack this turn. Dire Claw does 9 damage to Corviknight, actually healing it because it brings it under 50%. You can see the smile on Andrew's face knowing he accidentally healed his opponent's Pokemon. And that is the +5 Brave Bird into Kingambit. Crucially, that defense boost looks like it was the reason it survived.
Kingambit able to hang on through the turn. Of course, Corviknight would have eventually eaten its Citrus Berry anyway because of the Brave Bird recoil. So getting a little bit of damage on Dire Claw isn't so bad, and getting a chance for the status isn't so bad. Any status is really valuable here. If you get the poison, then that Corviknight's defense boosts aren't as valuable because it's going down. If you get the paralysis, Kingambit is moving first. And of course, if you get the sleep, well, things change a lot. And so a reasonable risk to go for the Dire Claw there, but now the Sucker Punch is tried. Try to get rid of the Sneasler before it attacked, or maybe they try to get damage into the Corviknight, but instead it's just coaching. Another defense boost onto Corviknight. Is it going to be Roost as well?
That is a maxed out Corviknight in attack and defense. Dire Claw does no damage, but he gets the paralysis. So there's a chance Corviknight is paralyzed this turn and can't roost, but Alberto does break through, roosting back up to almost full HP. I think that's what I understand Drew going for it there and say, hey, you never know what could happen. Maybe you get a sleep, maybe you do get a paralysis and stop the roost too.
Paralysis is pretty valuable because it gives a chance to stop the Roost or just stop damage coming out, but it also changes the speed relationship. Kingambit should be moving before the Corviknight now. You can see last turn, the Kingambit went for a Sucker Punch because it was worried it was just going to go down to Brave Bird on this turn. You don't have to take the same risk again, but the one risk was taken and it did not pay off. Missing a turn here in a game where both are just trying to like escalate further and further, missing an entire turn of Kingambit's attack when it's sitting at +5 is a really high cost.
Now he's in such a difficult spot as, yes, now Kingambit will be faster than Corviknight because of the paralysis, but its HP is so low that the rest of the team can do a lot. Sucker Punch into Sneasler, knocking out Alberto's Pokemon. So if Alberto is paralyzed this turn, he's not going to have any damage on the field. Drew will click Dire Claw into the Corviknight, hoping for a critical hit, but does not get it. And he does get the paralysis! So Andrew's able to KO the Sneasler and take no damage on his +5 Kingambit.
Dire Claw being so helpful here in a long, protracted game. Andrew had multiple attempts to Dire Claw and try to get the status, and then would have had multiple attempts to get a really pivotal, fully paralysis. Eventually one lands, but Ninetales still comes in a strong position here. Probably cannot take a Sucker Punch and a Dire Claw. Might not even be able to just take a Sucker Punch. It's going to be so much damage. But you have to worry if you go for Sucker Punch, it can just be Aurora Veil. Sucker Punch failed again as Dire Claw goes into Ninetales.
But it gets the sleep here on this turn. So Dire Claw proving crucial the 2 times in a row, the 2 status conditions it has given Drew, and he gets another paralysis. Sneasler, this is why it's the #1 usage Pokemon in Louisville. Crucial paralysis and crucial sleeps when Andrew needs it.
I'm not sure this is why it's the #1 in usage, but it's definitely helping Andrew here. Really changing the outlook of this game. Ninetales was going to be there to be set to Aurora Veil, instead sleeping through a couple turns in a row.
Dire Claw, we saw it didn't even do 50% last time to the Ninetales, so you know it's not going to be enough. And the Kowtow Cleave goes into the Corviknight. No paralysis finally means Brave Bird is able to KO the Kingambit, and that +5 Pokemon is knocked out.
Only one of the massively boosted Pokemon remained on the field, and is still relatively healthy. It's going to take a lot of attacks or a crit for this burnt Sneasler and burnt Metagross to ever deal with Corviknight. Corviknight has had to use a lot of Roost, but hasn't had to use all the Roost. Still has plenty of chances to heal here. Without a lot of bad luck in Andrew's favor, eventually this Corviknight should just win this game.
And look how low HP Metagross is. Maybe there's a world if Metagross was full HP and you could survive a couple more turns, but as you mentioned, Alberto still has 4 Roosts remaining on this Corviknight, so as long as it can break through the paralysis and heal itself up, it should be more than enough to handle this. But the Bullet Punch from the burned Metagross into Ninetales will knock it out. Alberto down to just the Corviknight remaining, but that's really the one Pokemon that he needs left in this matchup. Close combat from Sneasler into the Corviknight. Oh, I've never seen a close combat do such little damage before as he gets the defense drops on it and Body Press takes out the Metagross.
Yeah, not spending the time to Roost. You know the incoming damage is so little that the only way to lose this game is to take a critical hit, so give Andrew as few chances for that as possible. Just go out and get the KOs. Now you're one Brave Bird from winning. You just have to not get fully paralyzed once. You saw how little those close combats were doing. Close combat ran out of PP before it ever got close to killing this Corviknight.
Yeah, that's going to be it for this Sneasler. And Slow and Steady wins the race, and that is Alberto's fashion with this team. Boosting up his Corviknight to max attack, max defense, secures the victory in Game 1.
That was an intense game.
Yes.
That was the...
You're risking sleep, you're risking parry, you're risking crits also.
I've seen the coaching wars. I haven't seen the coaching wars where the Pokemon being coached are both also setting themselves up with Bulk Up and Sword Stance. Just so many boosts coming out, but ultimately the Corviknight was just in a better position for 2 reasons. One, they got the boosts earlier on. By the time the Kingambit hit the field, Corviknight already had 2 boosts, and so it was a game of catch-up for Kingambit. Even though some of that catch-up went in Andrew's favor, it wasn't enough. And the initial speed advantage for the Corviknight was also really relevant. It was getting the damage out, being able to Roost before taking Kowtow Cleave to be able to stay a little bit more healthy, and then forcing the Kingambit to consider Sucker Punches that then failed. 2 attacks with +5 Kingambit were missed because they were failed Sucker Punches.
Right, and it doesn't matter if you're maxed out. If the Sucker Punch is not going to land, it doesn't matter how many attack boosts you have because it's going to do 0 damage. You can see how strong this Corviknight was. It's one of Alberto's most successful Pokemon. I mean, in theory, I always associate Alberto with just a bulky steel flying type because he also won regionals with Celesteela back in the day too. So Celesteela kind of evolving here into the Corviknight, and an even better setup sweeper, really.
Yeah, he's able to bulk up when Celesteela never could, and really be the linchpin of a team. I think the other thing differentiating these teams, if what they're going to end up doing is both just boosting up defense and attack on some steel type, a really clear difference is that Alberto's special attackers are better. Has a Volcarona that can go out and do really significant damage with Flamethrower. It doesn't have to Quiver Dance to start doing that, but it can still make life difficult for Andrew. Was able to force the Metagross off the field, was able to threaten damage into Kingambit that drew attention away from Corviknight early to make sure that the Volcarona went down. Andrew doesn't have a tool like that to pivot into. We saw the Magmar in the last game. That's the closest thing to it, but there's a big difference between Volcarona offense and Magmar offense. Yeah,
for sure. And I think the 4 physical attackers on Andrew's end also don't appreciate a potential flame body activation, which we saw happen 2 times in Game 1. So what is Andrew's adjustments here? In Game 2, it'll be Sneasler, Kingambit right away. Let's get those Swords Dance coachings activated from the jump compared to Alberto, Sneasler, Corviknight.
Both Sneaslers on the field, both the steel types on the field. No being turns behind this time for Andrew. The coaching wars may get started early. Of course, there's a lot of little things involved here. The Kingambit may need to terastallize early to not just go down to a body press. Where the fake outs land, what the speed relationships are between the Sneaslers could be pretty relevant. There's also Protect on the Kingambit when there's not Protect on the Corviknight, which could let you get coachings ahead.
Andrew will terastallize Kingambit on turn 1 into the flying typing just in case Alberto wanted to go for a cheeky body press. Now he would resist that instead of being 4 times weak. Fake out goes into the Corviknight though, so Corviknight's not even getting able to attack at all, but Alberto saying, hey, I'll fake out your other Pokemon as well. So relatively not too much damage committed to the field. However, Andrew did have to commit Terra.
Yeah, Andrew has to commit Terra against these two fighting attackers. Alberto may eventually have to commit Terra, but doesn't for now. I think a really interesting aspect of the turn one, both players would have gotten more value out of faking out the Sneasler on the other side, but don't want to risk being the slower fake out or the or going into protect.
Coaching from Andrew will boost the attack and defense onto the King Gambit. The Dire Claw didn't do too much damage either to it, and Corviknight is he's gonna coach himself up, give himself the power from the bulk up, boosting attack and defense. But with a Swords Dance, you're able to essentially gain 3 attack boosts on 1 turn with this King Gambit.
Two different approaches here. The Corviknight can heal itself, so early damage against it isn't nearly as valuable. The King Gambit, though, cannot heal itself. And so early damage, like these two Dire Claws that already have King Gambit so low, and now Poison to take even more damage is really significant.
That puts King Gambit on a timer. He's not going to be able to stay in this match for long. Poison will add up over time. Another bulk up for the Corviknight, now +2 attack and defense. What does this Swords Dance boosted Kowtow Cleave do from the King Gambit into Corviknight? Brings it down under half HP, but it'll still heal up 25% thanks to the Citrus Berry.
The initial defenses of these two Pokemon are so different. Corviknight is so physically defensive that even that giant boosted Kowtow Cleave just barely does more than 50%, whereas King Gambit is initially vulnerable enough. Those Dire Claws did really significant damage and have already forced this King Gambit into a Sucker Punch set state of mind, and a Sucker Punch that once again failed as coaching goes into Corviknight.
And your Sucker Punch, it's not going to hit anything if Alberto just clicks 2 non-attacking moves with Roost and coaching. The close combat from Sneasler hardly does any damage. He's going to lower his defenses. Corviknight roosting off all of this damage back up to full HP, so he's +3 on that attack and defense stat. And the King Gambit is down to his last turn on the field. It would have been almost better to not Sucker Punch that last turn and just try to get a little bit of Kowtow Cleave damage.
Yeah, because you end up in a mind game this turn. The Corviknight and Sneasler could just get 2 more boosts onto Corviknight and let the King Gambit go down to poison damage without worrying too much about what the Kowtow Cleave would be, because at that point it would be in against a +4 defense Corviknight. The difference really is this healing. I think Andrew's game plan of kind of opting into the coaching wars when one side had healing and the other didn't is backfiring a lot. The Sneasler put pretty reasonable damage into Corviknight with close combat. The Kowtow Cleave was a lot of damage, but instead the Corviknight is still sitting there at 100% health because of Citrus Berry and Roost.
Metagross swaps into the Sneasler slot on Andrews, and Sucker Punch yet again failing. So 2 turns in a row. Even with the +3 attack, King Gambit, he's not getting any damage. The coaching will go into the Corviknight, boosting his attack and defense. And again, not the bulk up there. Instead, just going for the Brave Bird. That's a resistant attack, and it does about 40% to a very bulky Pokemon in Metagross. King Gambit does knock itself out due to the poison.
You can see how many boosts have accumulated that Brave Bird could do that much. And Alberto comes out of that initial Sneasler plus Steel war looking so far ahead as his Pokemon is still on the field, not status, fully healthy with all those boosts. Yes, Magmar is out here ready to use a fire move, but this Terastallization of it is available. Corviknight can just go fire type. And if that had to happen really early, then maybe Metagross's offense now into not a steel type could go for Heavy Slam, go for Psychic Fangs into the fire type. Corviknight would be more valuable, but so many defense boosts have come into Corviknight in the meantime. Sneasler can get another defense boost in before Metagross can land an attack into Corviknight. And it just starts looking very difficult to see how Metagross could do enough damage. And Magmar is just one Brave Bird away, right? You can go fire type and then just Brave Bird this Magmar off the field and create a 4-2, maybe 4-3 if the Sneasler goes down, but create a lead for Alberto.
Alberto taking a long time to decide what to lock in for this crucial turn in Game 2. Finally deciding to Terastallize Corviknight yet again for a second game in a row. Now a fire type would resist the overheat if the Magmar went for that, but Andrew deciding to keep Magmar safe with a protect on this turn. The coaching will go into this Corviknight, boosting it yet again in that attack and defense stat, just being a impossible physical wall to deal with. Psychic Fangs though from Metagross targeting down the Sneasler, and no more coaching, but also when you don't really need coaching anymore. This body press will go into the Metagross, and that is more than enough to knock it out. So Andrew down to his last 2 Pokemon.
The Coach of the Year, Sneasler, goes down, but has done its job. Corviknight is all the way boosted up, and there's not much left to do damage against it. It's the Sneasler and Magmar. It looks staring down a fire-type Corviknight. I think there's one way out for Andrew. We saw it last game. I would expect to see it again. Right now, it's that Dire Claw. Maybe if you get a status right here.
You miss 100% of the Dire Claws you don't take, and he gets the sleep. So Corviknight has to stay asleep, but it still doesn't matter because Ninetales sets up Aurora Veil, which is effectively Light Screen and Reflect at the same time, making this Corviknight even tankier than it already is. Overheat into the Ninetales because of Aurora Veil does not pick up the KO.
Yeah, Andrew doesn't prioritize damage into the Corviknight here, tries to just simplify the game a little bit and get Ninetales off, but it's not enough damage. Ninetales, of course, now is in Dire Claw KO range. The Corviknight, though, has spent one of its sleep turns after falling asleep because of Dire Claw last turn, will eventually wake up and take its choice of KO or Roost or whatever feels most appropriate in the moment. But for now, Andrew got what he needed. It's Corviknight taking a break from this game and Ninetales forced to fight by itself.
Just taking a quick Gatorade break for the Corviknight on the field last turn. The Dire Claw goes into Ninetales Protect, so doesn't do any damage, and Fire Spin from Magmar into Corviknight. I'm not even sure if the health bar even moved because of how little damage this Terrifier Corviknight took. It will use that second turn of sleep, though.
The damage over time from the Fire Spin is pretty important, though. Like, if there's a way you're going to try to deal with this Corviknight before it can heal, the Fire Spin was crucial. I think it maybe needed to be last turn. At this point, Corviknight has now spent 2 turns of sleep. Even if you get the full 3 turns before it wakes up and roosts off again, you probably can't KO the Corviknight in the meantime. But if I'm Andrew, I'm trying. I'm going to get the close combats in there. I'm going to try to get damage in there and see if there's a crit or something to be found to get Corviknight off the field.
Dire Claw from Sneasler will be finally enough to knock out this Ninetales, but because Ninetales is holding the Light Clay item, when it clicked Aurora Veil, that will boost the defense and special defense for 8 turns total on this Corviknight. Fire Spin doesn't do really a lot, and that is the 3rd turn of sleep, so we know at least Corviknight is guaranteed to wake up next turn, and because Sneasler is faster, it's not like you can chain sleeps on it, right? The Dire Claw has to attack first, then you would wake up, so we know Corviknight can't be status this turn.
Right, Corviknight will get a chance to wake up and roost off all the damage that has happened in the meantime. Maybe a close combat crit right here, right at this moment, is really the only way back for Andrew, because you saw Alberto's game plan. It's Quiver Dance on Volcarona. If you're going to try to pull out all the stops to get lucky enough to beat Corviknight, we'll just start setting up another sweeper on the side. The Magmar's never going to provide any offensive output. Sneasler's not going to deal with Volcarona or Corviknight very well, and so it's got to come out right now. It's got to be a critical hit. That's not it.
It's not. Does respectable 20 damage or so, more than it did in game 1. Quiver Dance with the Volcarona saying, hey, why have 1 setup sweeper when I can have 2 boosting special attack, special defense, and speed by 1 stage on this Volcarona? If you, in theory, ever even get through the Corviknight, by the time you get through Corviknight, the Volcarona will be so set up that it can sweep the rest of this game. Corviknight wakes up, and instead of clicking Brave Dance, will just roost to pretty much negate all of that damage it's taken these last couple turns while it was sleeping.
The Fire Spins are still ticking, little bits of damage coming in, but now you're at a situation where you just desperately need Dire Claw status again. That sleep was not a reproducible thing. That was the 10% chance from Dire Claw, and now you need it again. Otherwise, that Corviknight is going to take 1 KO each of the next 2 turns and into this set.
Magmar redirecting the attacks into that slot. Flamethrower into the Magmar is resisted, so it's going to take that much better. Dire Claw from Sneasler yet again. Will he get another status condition this time around? No. Body press into Magmar, and Drew just down to the Sneasler against these 2 set-up fire types on Alberto's side.
Yeah, and there goes the Fire Spin damage. It leaves the field with Magmar, and means that there's really no damage coming out from Andrew's side. It's all but over now, as these Pokemon are both so well set up to deal with the Sneasler. Volcarona now faster, just gets a massive Flamethrower in. Critical hit for the Whipped Cream on top.
You see the smile on Drew's face. He understands this one is wrapped up. He's also facing a friend here in Alberto. So while he does pick up his first loss of the regional, at least Alberto is going to move on after this matchup 6-0 into the later part of the Louisville.